Palo Alto Networks, the firewall, layer 3 participation. Let's get in some configuration for it now. This is kind of the idea about, we got a firewall, we may as well set the thing up and play with it, use it, and get it to do something for us. This is our first start for building that network. So getting into my layer 3 point of view, keep in mind that we're starting to see how things will move through and really how you got to set up the firewall in order to make things move through the way that we want them to, I guess is more the important thing. So you and I need to take kind of a special look at how our firewall is set up. Notice on here I have rearranged the drawing a little bit to kind of give, I guess, a more real-world flavor to things on here in terms of the interfaces or the areas, zones, fair enough, call a spade, but those zones and those security policies that'll be involved. I have also put interface IDs on here, again, just to kind of give that physical to logical aspect of things so we can start to visualize what the firewall is going to be doing and how it's going to be doing it, where it's going to be doing it. Okay? So kind of watch that as we go through here, because we'll go through things really for each of these as far as setting up our layer 3 interfaces, go along with the zones that we have already. We will also do some DHCP and some NAT to kind of get the idea where our users can be able to access the internet at that point. Now, nice thing on here, since I've added an interface for what I had before, it's a virtual machine, so it's really fairly simple to do on there. Physical machine, obviously not quite as easy, but they have more interfaces already built in for us. So it kind of gives us a way or a sense of things to play with on here. And again, this is all about visualizing how the information is going to be handled and what pieces are going to do. Because we're going to start building this block by block. Okay, so you and I got to get these basics down. We'll get into some security policy stuff next, and then we'll start even adding on more and more detail as we go. And next thing you know, we're going to have a full-fledged configuration ready to hand off to an enterprise. So that's kind of the cool part in here, is we can see things building step by step. But like I said, I think it's very important that we sit back and kind of look at each of these pieces so that we can understand what the Palo Alto firewall is thinking as we go through them, because that's going to be an important part, not just from a configuration point of view, but certainly from a troubleshooting point of view. God forbid something goes wrong on there, but whatever karma problem we may have, watch for it and be able to anticipate or to think about what's going to be going on there. So with all that aside, let's go ahead and get started, get into the nitty-gritty and really the cool stuff, which is, of course, on the box, not just me sitting here talking about it. So let's go. Actually, you know what? Before we start, we should probably lay out exactly what we're going to have. Subnets, details, small things. So in my internet up here, we're going to have live space. Okay, so we got some public IPs. We can set them to whatever we want, but in our case, as far as being operational, I've got 208.81.23.150. That's going to be my address out here. Okay? And we'll use private space all on the inside. Now, I've got a few different subnets or things that we're looking at. Okay, so users, we've already got a VLAN and a subnet set up, 192.168.201.0/24. Servers, 192.168.210.0/24. Okay. And then, let's see, what do we have? We have a VPN network on here, and we'll just kind of go ahead and do something completely different on here. 10.251.0/24. And what's our other one? We've got special servers. Okay, so just special on there. 10.90.1.0. So we've got our ranges set up for things on here. So my different interfaces, my different groups, we just pick IPs out of that range. Obviously, it's going to be important if these devices are using that as a default gateway. We'll need to either arrange it with our DHCP services. Hey, look at that. We can configure those fun things. Or with whatever else we have set up, whatever other devices handling it or static ones, we need to make sure that the packets go the way that they're supposed to. Or if there's other routers involved, we set up the appropriate routes and those things. Okay? Because everything in a network is about reachability. So that being said, these are the devices that we're going to have on here. I am going to look at doing NAT for my users and for my VPN right now, because honestly, we're just going to do dynamic NAT. Static NAT we'll kind of handle as we go and as we build our policies, so we'll do things step by step in different nuggets. But for right now, kind of get a flavor for it, see how these things are done, and kind of take that as we go. So these are the details. Lay out the numbers, write them out on a piece of paper if you want to remember them on there, because otherwise, now we're going to go into the configuration and get things going. Alright, so we've gone ahead and logged into our dashboard here, so we see our main screen, kind of tells us where we're at, or at least where we laid off from our last version of configuration. Okay? And so when I start looking at things, objects we'll get into later, but network right now is a great place that I want to start with stuff. And keep in mind that what we had as far as our basic interfaces, we really hadn't set anything up before, so not a whole lot of things to go on. Now, zone-wise, let's make sure that we do have what we want on there, okay? And we can create them as you went. So we did touch on that before as far as creating our zones. I've renamed a couple of them on here to kind of go along with our new set, but that was the idea that we had. So our zones need to exist. Well, I guess not really, because even if we're going into interfaces, we're going to find ways that we can plug that in. Okay, so I want to have my specialty servers. I just call it security cams. So I've got my clients, my user VPN, I have the servers, I have the special servers, the security cams, and I have the internet. So those are the 5 zones that we're going to be playing around with on there and what we have going on. So with that in mind, go into my interfaces on here, and now it's time to start assigning them based on what we had on the diagram before. Okay? So 1.1, as we had, it was going to be our clients. So as we click on the interface right there, it seems to be fairly simple. We can give it a name if we want, or we can stick with the Ethernet 1.1, perfectly fine. What we are going to change, however, is the interface type. So these things all on here, we're going to be dealing with layer 3. Definitely what I like to happen to do on there. I don't have a NetFlow profile right now. That's really not something we're going to get into. But again, like everything else, if I go to a drop-down and I don't have it, but I want to create one, notice that there's that link right there. So it does make it fairly intuitive in terms of what I want to be able to put on here. Okay? So I do have to go through my virtual router. We'll put everything in default. Okay, I'm not getting into virtual systems, virtual routers, any of that jazz on here, but I'm going to be placing my security zone. So we said Ethernet 1.1 was going to be my clients. So go ahead and pick that on there. Perfectly cool. Hit my IPv4 address, and we're going to go ahead and add one. Now, I have names for things. I have things set up in terms of where we're at. Okay? Now, and again, this is just something that I've already done from that standpoint. Okay? So if we wanted to see what these things were named or what they're going to be called or anything like that, delete that, and I can go ahead and add a new address in here. So give it a name, a description, IPNet mask, which is the standard way of doing things, and if I want to put any tags on there, again, those were for those dynamic lists that we may have, I can put tags on stuff. I've got a couple tags that are, okay, or are not defined, but we could put them on there, don't really have any need to at this point in time. So go ahead, and what I'm going to do is go to my drop-down, pick my client interface, and I should be all good to go. Click OK on that, and it should tell me here that I'm perfectly fine with those addresses. Now, if I wanted to see this, by the way, as far as what it is, my objects and my addresses are where things are going to be at. Okay? So that's if I'd done an add and put that information in there. Like I said, very simple and straightforward to it. They're all IPNet mask, but I've got my 192.168.201. There's my address for it, 208.81.23.150. We've been given that from our ISP or whomever you're dealing with. My security cams, my servers, and my user VPN. All of this information is already stored in an object called addresses. We'll be spending a lot more time in the objects, by the way, once we get into a security policy. For right now, though, just know that they exist. Everything pretty much is going to be an object. You're going to have some name for something going somewhere. If you look at a CLI config, that will represent a huge portion of your configuration. Just all these names to go along with the numbers. And you know why? It's to help make our lives easier. Yes, it's an extra step as we go through, but really, so 6 months down the road, you and I can sit and look at this, and especially if we're working as a consultant where you're not touching a network every single day, numbers don't have a meaning. Maybe some do, and if they're your own, absolutely they will. But in general, when you're hopping from network to network to network, and especially if everybody's reusing private addresses, after a while, it's really not worth remembering because you'll just confuse the crap out of you. So as you go, name the information. Name them something useful. Please, God, do not just name them the IP that you happen to use. Yes, I know a lot of people do that. It is really, really irritating, and it's very confusing if you have to go troubleshoot or work on somebody else's device, something that you're not intimately familiar with. So name things. Name things that make sense. Don't call them Bob and Joe and Sue. Name them in a way that will make sense 6 months down the road after you've been in a car accident and forgot half the stuff that you know. That's a good way to think about things as you design your network. So, in any event, back to our interfaces on here. Go ahead and put the rest of these on here. So, Ethernet 1, 2 is my cameras. So, again, changing it to layer 3. Don't need a profile on there. Virtual router default. Security zones. These will be my cams. Perfectly cool. IPv4 address. Add one. And security cam interface. Cool, good to go on that. Ethernet 1.3 is going to be my servers. Oops. Back and change my virtual router here. Default security zone servers. Alright. 1.4 is actually the internet. The internet. Okay, again, default. Here's my internet. IPv4 address. Internet interface. Okay, and last but not least, 1.5 is going to be my user VPN. Okay, so layer 3 again. Default virtual router, user VPN, add address, user VPN interface, click that, and OK, and we're good to go. So, now at this point in time, we have gone through and put IP addresses on all of our interfaces. That doesn't mean we can ping anything or do anything yet, because guess what? You haven't committed. So little small things that we are going to have to do in there to kind of take place and look at where it is that we're at. So let's go ahead and commit on that. Give it a couple seconds. Override the running config. Absolutely, I want to do that. Because you got to remember the changes that we make are not live immediately until we go ahead and do this. This is good for a protection mechanism and make sure that we can kind of test things out and leave things going without locking ourselves out of the firewall as we go. Believe me, on different devices or certainly other vendors' devices, been there, done that. Okay, all right, we committed successfully, so we are good to go on that, and now we're ready for our next step. All right, now one of the next things I want to talk about and hit on real quick here, still on our interfaces, is the management profiles. Okay, we talked about these in our last, and I'll get about the concepts here. This is to deal with how an interface responds to things directed to itself. Okay? And by default, the answer is it'll just drop everything. So when we start looking at things, and again, this just goes back to how you want to design and how you want to look at stuff. My recommendation is that we at least have a ping allowed to every interface. Okay? So that way we can use it, excuse me, that way we can use it for our testing and kind of really make our life a lot easier. Over on the left-hand side down here, we have interface management, network profiles, interface management is what we're going to get down to. We have one that's created. Okay, so I created this as far as a ping profile. And all this is just allowing ping. So you can see the different pieces, the different things that are on there as far as what we're going to have. So what I want to do is I'll go ahead and create another one on here, and we'll call it user profile. We will still want to allow pings on there. I probably don't want to do any of these things from a management point of view. I do, however, want to have response pages, and we'll click the different user ID features to kind of enable those for as we move forward. Okay? So ping being the basic part, response pages are if we choose for an application or a security profile to tell the user, hey, you've been blocked, as opposed to just dropping stuff. It's all entirely up to you what you do, but this is what I like to do for handing that information. Okay? And I might create one more. I have an add one and say server admin profile, and that'll allow ping and SSH and my HTTPS and SNMP portion on there, and we'll go ahead and allow these as well. Okay? So that way, in case I want to do some management, or more importantly SNMP from a server point of view, that this information will be properly transmitted or properly handled by there. Okay? So I've gone through. Oh, it's not going to like the slash. Right? Fine be that way. Now we get the OK button. Okay. So we have the ideas. We can see them all on here. That's perfectly cool. Now let me go back to the interfaces, and we're going to have to go through to each one. Okay, and we'll say first one here is going to be client interface. Now under advanced is where this happens to be. So notice my management profile right here, default is none. So from a user standpoint, remember that's what this is my users. I will go ahead and put my user profile. I can go ahead and put a comment as well, just to kind of see things a little bit easier on here from one page. So client users, that's pretty cool. Alright, this will be security cams. Cams, not came. Advanced again on here. Management profile, really probably just do the ping for that. Not going to have any users or anything on there. This will be just other devices. Alright. And my servers. Admin. So click on advanced, management profile. This is where I want to do the server admin one. Click OK. My internet interface, well, definitely from the internet I don't want to do a whole heck of a lot. Okay. So when we start looking at this, and I guess it depends on what you have going on, I probably would still do a ping, so I'll just kind of keep that basic on there, because if I have services that people are going to be viewing, one of the tests that I may want to do as a user calls in and says that he can't get to my server is say, okay, well, can you get to my router? Here's this address, just ping it and see what happens. So that I would probably go ahead and put on there just for that testing purpose. Okay, user VPN. Services, it's spelled today, advanced, and we'll go ahead and put this in the user profile. And we are good to go with that. Okay? So all of my information on here is going to have that now that we have those abilities based on that management profile for how I want to tag things. Okay? All it does is put the comments on here. So on my main screen is not going to tell me about the management profile, but it'll give me the information, the basic information about what I have. And again, hopefully these names, between these right here for my addresses and these right here for my comments, will be enough information to mean something to you and I 6 months down the road, head injury, just forgetfulness, whatever it happens to be, that will remember what's going on in here and can properly administer the system time in and time out. That's what the goal is. So again, I've made my changes on here. Let me go ahead and commit that stuff. Yes, I want to go ahead and do that, and we're going to be good to go. Cool. Committed successfully, and I like that. So there's our start for getting through things on the layer 3 interfaces. And we talked about, well, I guess the details for it, not just the IP and that information that goes along with it, but also, say, plus the management profile. Remember, the management profiles will give me the ping or the SSH or the HTTPS, but or the user pages or stuff like that. We actually set up 3 of those different ones. I'd certainly advise going through and determining what you want to do per your setup or per your policies at that point, but use this to help you control or help you be able to participate nicely you deal with your users and all the fun stuff like that, but everything we need to do to get started. Now, and again, this is just our starting point, so we've got many things coming. So next nugget, we're going to get into that DHCP and the NAT services, the next steps in moving us forward for actually processing traffic and getting things going. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.